Hi everyone. It's been several months since I videoed actually, and I've got a lot to update you on. I guess if I could just say it all briefly, I have finished traveling and settled down in Canberra. I've also got 2 different guinea pigs to the first 2 that I started off with. And a lot has been happening between me and Jesus. So to backtrack a little bit, I mentioned in a recent video that Ivy, my guinea pig, had passed away. And after a month, I got a new companion for Willow. I was in Tasmania at the time, so I called her Tassie. Here's Tassie from Tasmania. I mentioned in my Q&A video that I was attempting to very slowly come off my antidepressants. I had been doing so well with my mental health earlier on in the year that I was like, I think I can slowly come off this now. I've got things that I can put in place, such as exercise, working 4 days a week instead of 5, and other self-care things. I'm going to try slowly coming off my medication. And at first it went okay, but then Ivy passed away. And then I got to Hobart and things initially went downhill very gradually and then went downhill very suddenly. A month after I got Tassie here, Willow passed away too. Willow and Ivy were both less than 2 years old, and the vets assured me that I took great care of them. It was just bad luck that Ivy had a tooth root abscess that was beyond repair, and Willow had an abscess, or probably multiple abscesses, in her throat, which actually killed her very quickly. Ivy got put down after a couple of surgeries, and Willow just died a few days after having one surgery. It was very sudden. So Tassie was left without a companion, even though she was meant to be a companion for Willow. That was when everything just suddenly came crashing down. The sadness over Willow as well as Ivy, thinking that it was my fault that they had both died so young, being on a much lower dose of my medication and other stuff too that I'll explain in another video. Suddenly I was in a really bad headspace. And so I flew back to Sydney for a week and a half. Tassie flew too, not on the same plane as me, but I did manage to book her on a freight plane because obviously she needed to be with me. She'd already lost her companion. She needed to be with me. And then things started to get a lot better while I was back home in Sydney. But then after a week and a half, I flew back down to Hobart, and then I got a new companion for Tassie. On my 3rd day back in Hobart, I got Annie, Tassie's new companion. However, after a few days, I realized that I really needed to be properly back home in Sydney. There was the accumulation of things that I mentioned earlier that were affecting my mental health, and also I was feeling very isolated where I was as well. I needed to be around people. I needed to be around people that I know and love and trust. And so I came back to Sydney again, but instead of flying, I took my car, Tassie and Annie, and all my luggage. Got the Spirit of Tasmania over the Bass Strait, and then I met my dad at Geelong when I got off the boat after it had already been delayed for 13 hours and it was Father's Day. And we spent the next 24 hours driving from Geelong to Sydney via somewhere a few hours into the drive where we stopped to just sort of close our eyes for about 3 hours. We didn't really sleep. And then we stopped again at Wagga Wagga, where we have some relatives. We actually slept there for about 4 hours, and then we continued the rest of the drive home. I really needed someone with me for company, especially if I was to be in a fit state to drive. And yeah, my dad gave up his Father's Day celebrations to fly down to Melbourne and then get a train to Geelong so that he could drive from Geelong to Sydney with me. And then he had to wait an extra 13 hours or so because the boat got delayed because of extreme weather. So it became a day voyage instead of a night voyage. After spending a bit of time back in Sydney and doing a little bit of work in Sydney, I decided, okay, I'm not going to continue on to South Australia next term. Maybe next year, but for now, I need to go back to Canberra because that's where my church is. I had officially left my Sydney church and decided that I was going to make my church in Canberra my home church when I came back, somewhere down the track. And so I decided I'm going to go there for the rest of the year. I'll come back to Sydney for Christmas and New Year and all that. And then I'll decide, do I just head back to Canberra and settle down there, or do I continue traveling? Within a couple of days, really, in Canberra, I'd pretty much decided I'm staying here. Don't eat my t-shirt, Annie. You silly piggy. I love how Canberra is the best of both worlds in that it's a capital city, so you don't have to go too far to go to a Coles or a Target or Kmart or whatever. But it's also country. It's not super crowded like Sydney and Melbourne. Even though I live right near the CBD, it's actually still nothing compared to Sydney and Melbourne, really. There's mountains or big hills, whatever you want to call them, and bushwalks everywhere, lakes and rivers. There's a really nice school just outside town that I've been working at, and there's my church family. So it just seemed to make sense to settle down here. I still haven't been to South Australia ever. I've been to all the other states and territories at some point, whether it was officially during my working holiday or whether it was sometime before that. But I've still never been to South Australia. I got my teaching approval for there and my working with children check. So it'd be nice to go there at some stage, whether it's just for a week or so during the school holidays or whether it's actually a term to work there. I would like to do more travel sometime in the future, but for now, God has called me back to Canberra. And I've got a lovely housemate here, great church. I'm working at a school that I'm really enjoying, and yeah, my arm's getting tired, Annie. Well, Tassie is the pocket piggy who loves to snuggle up into tiny spaces. Annie's the perching piggy. She always likes to perch on something, whether it's my elbow or my shoulder or the back of my neck, and be able to see what's going on. So the other update is that there's been a lot going on between me and Jesus recently. I'm going to save that for my next video, which is going to be my testimony video. But long story short, I had been really struggling with my faith. And the day that Willow died was actually the day that I started watching The Chosen, which is a TV series based on the life of Jesus from the perspective of his disciples. And everything just became so much clearer that day. Even though I was still a Christian before I watched that, in a way it feels like I've been born again all over again, which doesn't quite make sense, but God doesn't completely make sense to our human brains either. But yeah, life is good, Canberra's good, Tassie and Annie are good, although Annie's currently trying to eat my t-shirt, and God is good all the time. All the time God is good. I'll see you, well, you'll see me in my testimony video. Bye for now.